starring the guy that was on a one-man crime spree apparently across the United States, not the continental United States, because the shit was happening in Hawaii as well. Oh shit, I forgot he was in Iceland. Maybe it was a worldwide crime spree. It's a tale as old as time. The unstoppable force versus the immovable object. The unstoppable force being Kevin Feige and the MCU and the freight train that it was. The immovable object being fan expectations that the movies will actually be good. And it was all going to come to a head this past weekend. And it turns out the immovable object has held out, and fan expectations that they deliver better movies did win out. And they didn't just go blindly to the movie theaters to go check out the Marvels. And they're going to take quite a haircut on this one. When I say haircut, they're going to lose a shitload of money, like a lot of money. This thing underperformed basically every other movie in the history of the MCU. And we're going all the way back like pre-MCU days to The Incredible Hulk starring Ed Norton. Do you remember when that one came out? Was it like 2005 or something like that? This thing performed so miserably, and it was to be expected. We kind of saw the momentum for this building up, that people just weren't interested in a CGI fest version of Freaky Friday that was clearly a movie created for 12-year-old girls. And there's nothing wrong with 12-year-old girls, and there's nothing wrong with making movies aimed at 12-year-old girls. I would suggest not spending $300 million to make said movie, and I certainly wouldn't use a property like the MCU, which certainly aims a little bit more towards the male audience and adults as well, to actually use that as the vehicle for your movie for 12-year-old girls. Probably just a bad plan from the start. They never made Captain Marvel 2. They ended up making The Marvels, and it is all blown up in their face. And I'm here to talk about it. This is going to be fun. The Marvels box office debut is anything but marvelous. From Marvel Studios and Disney, the superhero tentpole opened to an estimated $47 million at the domestic box office, to rank as the worst start in the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It also came in behind expectations overseas, where it launched with $63.3 million from 51 material markets for a global start of $110 million against a hefty $200 million production budget. And we all know that $200 million production budget is kind of bullshit. It's actually much closer to $300 million if it didn't actually meet the $300 million threshold itself. This movie needed to make, during its entire box office run, like a nice hefty 900 million, 800 million, somewhere in there, just to break even at the global box office. This is not going to come close to that. You think about the very first Captain Marvel movie, and it did $153 million at the domestic box office alone on the opening weekend, and certainly did far bigger numbers than that worldwide on opening weekend. There's a pretty damn good chance that the Marvels itself, during its entire run, unless people just come out in droves, and it doesn't sound like that's going to happen, won't even reach, during the entire lifetime, the opening weekend of Captain Marvel. What a massive misstep. What an enormous failure for Kevin Feige and the people at Marvel Studios. How did you drop so far that you actually couldn't produce a competent sequel to a movie that made $1 billion? In spite of itself, it probably didn't deserve to make $1 billion, but it did cross $1 billion, and we are in a new age of the MCU. The budgets are going to be lower. I think they're going to be a little bit more meticulous when deciding what stories they want to actually adapt for the big screen, and certainly what talents they want to hire, whether it be the actors portraying the heroes, but certainly the directors and writers bringing these stories to the big screen, because it has not worked out. Kevin Feige's strategy of going out there and hiring people for the sake of diversity rather than being competent, skilled people in their vocation is likely out the door, because they cannot continue to lose money like this. Before now, 2008's The Incredible Hulk held the record for the lowest domestic opening of any MCU title at $55.4 million. Not adjusted for inflation, Marvel, which wasn't owned by Disney at the time, partnered with Universal for Hulk. The next lowest MCU opening belonged to Marvel Disney's Ant-Man, which started with $57.2 million domestically in 2015. 2008, my goodness, that's over 15 years ago. I actually saw The Incredible Hulk in theaters when I was living in England at the time. That was like a lifetime ago from here. I've actually been retired from the Air Force for 6 years at this point. I've had 3 kids and got married in the meantime. And it feels like a lifetime ago. Man, I was only 30 years old when that movie came out. And I remember going and seeing it in England. And man, after England, where did I go? I went to Omaha, and then I went to Alaska, and then I went to Korea. and then I went down to Texas. So there's been a lot of moves since then. That's how long it's been. I've like lived an entire lifetime since The Incredible Hulk starring Edward Norton came out. And that's a pretty good movie. That's probably like the most underappreciated MCU movie out there is The Incredible Hulk. People probably don't even remember that it's associated with the MCU itself. It was the second movie after Iron Man. And, it's undervalued. It's probably right there underneath Thor, the first Thor movie, as far as underappreciated MCU movies. Bring Ed Norton back and get Mark Ruffalo out of here. Kick that man to the curb and bring a real actor in. But my goodness, it's actually underperformed The Incredible Hulk from 15 years ago, when the idea of making $1 billion off of a superhero movie was completely inconceivable at the time. What did Batman Begins do after that? When people were like, oh my goodness, Batman Begins did great. It did $517 million worldwide. These movies now have budgets that are almost that big. It's been so long. You actually underperformed Ant-Man. That stuff's hard to do. It's really impressive what Kevin Feige and the people behind Marvel Studios have done to their brand, to where nobody wants to stick around. And it doesn't sound like people will be showing up based on word of mouth, because that is killing the Marvels, which is only the third MCU title to receive a B cinema score from audiences after Eternals and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. The vast majority of MCU releases have earned some variation of an A. Its Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 62% is likewise on the lower end. Males made up the majority of ticket buyers, or 61%, while 45% of the grosses came from IMAX and other premium large format screens. Well, that's some really good company. I wonder why this isn't working out very well. People thought it was about as good as the Eternals and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania when they walked out of the theater. That's when they have the new movie high going on, and they still thought it basically sucked. Like, having anything underneath an A as your cinema score just doesn't really happen for the MCU. But I'm not surprised that the three movies that have accomplished that have all happened, within the last 36 months or so, during phase 4 and now into phase 5. Being on par with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is embarrassing. They should have learned their mistakes about what an absolute shit show that movie was. I feel dumber for having watched that on Disney Plus. I didn't buy Disney Plus to watch Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. In theory, you could kind of think of it as just like a little cherry on top freebie. And I still feel like I got ripped off. That movie was so bad. And I haven't even checked out Eternals, because who cares? No one's ever thought about Eternals in comic books, let alone in movies. So this is absolutely keeping rarefied company when it comes to the audience reception of the film. And, I've seen the pictures out there. I know Perch took his daughter to the theater and, he sent a picture out. Nobody was in the movie. The movie had already started. They were the only people in the entire theater. And I imagine a lot of people that went out and watched the Marvels, that maybe if it wasn't on like Friday night, probably had the exact same experience, where they were literally the only ones in the theater because there was so little interest in this. And I don't think the word of mouth is going to be able to save this, where word of mouth absolutely saved Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. That was underperforming big time. But the word of mouth was out there like, hey, man, this movie fucking rocks. If you haven't checked it out, you better go to the theater and check it out, because it's absolutely worth it. And people listened to it, and they went out there and checked out the movie. Even something like Elemental from Pixar, which had a very disastrous opening day, had better word of mouth and was able to have a better draw long term. But this thing is doing so bad, there's not going to be any legs there, because nobody was really interested in the movie from get-go, and it turns out it wasn't good either. It's absolutely a 1-2 combination, but this is, just a lot of really bad business decisions by Kevin Feige when it came to the creative partners that he was hiring to work in the MCU with him. The Marvels is unique for a superhero film in that it stars 3 female leads. It was directed by Nia DaCosta, who was the first Black woman to direct a Marvel Studios movie, as well as the youngest director of an MCU film. DaCosta turned 34 on November 8th. Marvel has taken pride in fostering such indie directors as Ryan Coogler, Taika Waititi, and Chloe Zhao. And I think it's interesting that they mentioned Nia DaCosta with those last 3 directors, because 2 of them have proven to be absolutely toxic to Marvel's brand and actually turn people off to it. Sure, Ryan Coogler, indie darling, but he also made Creed before he joined the MCU. He was already a proven box office winner that had done a big budget production, with the new sequels take on the original Rocky premise. Obviously, you had Sylvester Stallone in there as well. And Creed's a damn good movie, and I can see why Ryan Coogler was a really good choice because he was a really, really good director. Taika Waititi is a fucking comedic director. Yeah, if you want to make a comedic movie, maybe he would be a good director. And it kind of worked out, I guess, in some people's eyes for Thor Ragnarok, where he didn't write the damn thing. He only directed it. But once he actually picked up writing duties as well with Thor Love and Thunder, like that thing is absolute garbage. It's worse, in my opinion, than Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It is absolutely terrible. People hate that movie. Chloe Zhao, why was she directing an MCU movie? Why you gave her the Eternals? Wow, we've got an Asian female director for our big action franchise. Wait, let's look at the demographics of the people that actually went to go see the Marvels. Oh, yep, it's still primarily male. Maybe we should just hire people that want to make action movies. And they're having the exact same problem right now with another movie called, what is it, Captain America Brave New World? I think they might have changed the title on that one. And they've had to move that one back. Guess what? They just did the test screenings. Needs 5 more months of reshoots. Guess who they hired for that one? A Nigerian-born male director. Guess what he had on his credentials? 3 movies prior to the Captain America movie. One of them was the Cloverfield Paradox. Have you ever seen that movie? Tell me you want that person to direct anything, let alone a superhero movie. Kevin Feige, Marvel Studios started huffing their own farts. They thought they were the brand, and they could just bring any Tom, Dick, and Harry off the streets to write and direct their movies as long as they met the right diversity quota check marks, rather than going out there and scouring and finding the best up-and-coming talent or the best established talent that would actually work for their franchise. The Marvels marks a new low for Kevin Feige's Marvel Studio and adds fuel to the theory that superhero fatigue is a real thing. As fanboys grow weary of a glut of titles and are hence far less forgiving, Marvel has been unrivaled in its success for years, with its movies collecting more than $30 billion in grosses at the worldwide box office. Until now, rival DC was the superhero studio that endured the biggest ups and downs, with a good number of its films opening to $50 million or less. In comparison, many MCU releases started with $100 million or more domestically. This summer, DC's The Flash debuted to a dismal $55 million domestically, on its way to topping out at a paltry $270.6 million globally. That's right, The Flash actually did better on its opening weekend than the Marvels. Can you believe it? How far have you fallen, Kevin Feige? You've dropped the ball so bad. You need to rediscover whatever it is you had, 7-8 years ago and get back to that, because now you've fallen underneath the fucking Flash movie starring the guy that was on a one-man crime spree apparently across the United States, not the continental United States, because the shit was happening in Hawaii as well. Oh shit, I forgot he was in Iceland. Maybe it was a worldwide crime spree that he was on, and that movie actually outperformed the Marvels. That's how bad you've fallen. They will be lucky if the Marvel sniffs $300 million at the global box office during its run. That is losing a ton of money. We know the budget is actually $300 million, not $200 million. $300 million at the global box office. 50% of the receipts go to the theaters. That means you made $150 million. You've already lost $150 million just on the production budget, plus another $150, maybe $200 million in marketing. They might lose $300 or $350 million on the Marvels. My goodness, how many of these can you actually do before you get it through your thick skulls that, yes, you need to go out there and find the best heroes with the best stories, go and find them, adapt them correctly to the big screen, and find the right people to go and portray them out there, and find the right directors to bring them out there, because people will show up. I don't think superhero fatigue is actually real. I think people are just fed up with the current quality associated with the MCU. What happened when Spider-Man No Way Home was good? People showed up to the tune of $1 billion. What happened when Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was good? Despite tepid interest in the movie to begin with, they showed up $850 million. People will show up to a good quality MCU movie, but they're not going to show up if Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios think they can just take a crap on the screen and tell you it's a Marvel's movie. And that's basically what's going on here. And 2023 is going to be the year of the flop. The media have been underreporting a lot of these numbers, and we know it's kind of all bullshit. They're certainly going to underreport what's happened with the Marvels. I kind of broke it all down right here for Indiana Jones, The Flash, and several other movies that flopped enormously in 2023. There's also a link in the video description. Sorry, I have an ant in my foot.